Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
My decade behind the mic on relationships and 40-plus years as a therapist, episode 145. There have been a lot of experiments on my path to becoming a therapist over the last 40 years, and I am celebrating a decade of podcasting in April of 2025. I earned my BA in 3 years and 6 weeks to save money. I grew up working class. I was proud of my dad, who was a self-employed electrician. My first job out of college was 1.5 years of waitressing the 6 a.m. breakfast shift. Not my best time period of the day. I finally did get my first social work job by interviewing for a job as the recreational director at a black settlement house. I was filled with anxiety because I am not an athletic soul. But when I showed up to take the job, it turned out that Mr. Bray, the executive director, told me that the job would be as a family services caseworker. He hadn't mentioned there were 2 jobs open. My future became a whole lot brighter. We left Rochester to move to Pittsburgh, a wonderful city with tons of culture where we remain. I worked with women coming out of prison and jail for the Female Offenders Program of Western Pennsylvania. I want to give a shout out to the book, Chain Gang All-Stars. It is magnificent and intersperses facts, true actual facts and research about all the people who are locked up in prison. And it gives you a more honest perspective that I personally appreciate from having done that work. I earned my MSW at the University of Pittsburgh and my postgraduate work at the Gestalt Center of Cleveland, which was started by Laura Pearls, with whom I had the honor of learning under. Also, first-generation mentors like Sonia Nevis and Joseph Zinker. It was actually the best learning opportunity of my entire life. I had the opportunity to be grounded in a theory of change. I moved on to become the director of the incest program at Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. I was completely unsure of what this would require in terms of being successful. In the 1980s, there were only 2 books written about incest, but I was lucky. I got to learn from my clients. I then moved on to work part-time doing drug and alcohol work because no one should be engaged in private practice without a firm understanding of addiction. I opened my private practice in 1981, back when insurance was not available for social workers in Pennsylvania. We were one of the last states to grant licensing for MSWs. 10 years ago, at the age of 62, I explored podcasting after a phone call from a consultant before I really understood what was required to do it well. I found courses online. There was so much to learn about it. It was just an amazing amount of information to digest and make it all work. I went to 2 podcast movement gatherings where most everybody was very young and I was not. I firmly believe the saying from medieval times that fortune favors the bold. I believe taking risks your whole life really super matters. When we moved to Pittsburgh in 1975, we knew absolutely no one and had not even been able to afford to visit ahead of time. There was no Google Earth to look it up because there just wasn't, it didn't exist before we arrived. Making uncertainty bearable in order to take risks, experimenting with choices, and exploring is the best path to find your best life. Playing it safe is overrated. Technology will always remain the hardest part for me. I bought an expensive soundboard that I couldn't figure out how to use and ended up sitting on it for a year and a half after many frustrating attempts to make it useful. I was ready to beat it into submission when I discovered a Facebook group devoted to this machine, which I never even would have believed was possible. It's just amazing to me. There's a group about a machine. It was there I found a lovely gentleman in Montana who spent 45 minutes with me and made it work. He wouldn't take a penny for his help. I cried as I hung up with the success of this accomplishment. He even reminded me to take a picture of the correct position for all the buttons. He was so great. I never intended to make any income doing the podcast. I've taken on every bit of the cost, although I had little idea how much that might end up being. Over dinner not too long ago, a wealthy dinner guest literally asked me, well, why the hell aren't you making money? My husband grew up Jewish and knows tikkun olam, a concept in Judaism that refers to taking action to repair and improve the world. That's where I stand. Social work is in my DNA, caring about people who have less than I, living in a diverse neighborhood. Class, power, and greed are such a huge part of our culture's dark side. My private practice was in Sharpsburg, a very working-class neighborhood. A local minister, one of 3 from a nearby wealthy church, reached out to me and said he'd heard good things about me and wanted to meet to discuss referrals. I asked if he wanted to come to my office in Sharpsburg, and he said no. Come to the church. The very first words out of his mouth. Tell me, why is your office in Sharpsburg? I responded, I like my rich people better when they come to Sharpsburg for therapy. He did not laugh or even smile, clearly buying into class makes you better. Of course, he never made a referral. The wealthy 1% having even greater tax cuts instead of the other 80% is deeply problematic. America losing out on the rule of law and democratic principles is deeply disturbing. I believe the boomers have had the easiest opportunities in a world that is now struggling. Think about that. Climate changes that dangerously impact the environment, a growing lack of water, and a host of other issues are putting future generations in jeopardy. These are our grandchildren. So if my podcast can offer knowledge and fresh ideas on how to look at ourselves and our relationships, it's worth doing as a volunteer effort. Therapy and my podcast isn't about changing the essence of who you are ever, or about blaming your mother. Therapy is about becoming more whole, adding to your abilities, not subtracting them. It's a range to who you are, and we're all lopsided. And therapy is about helping you tilt that balance to be a little bit more able to have both sides of you available. And you'll hear me refer to duality often in my podcast episodes. So therapy is about expanding the range of who you can be. Just one example would be deciding that anxiety has too much power in your life and decide to explore small moments of courage to create more balance. The core of being a therapist is wanting to understand, then wanting to pass understanding on to others. As a very young child, I visited my maternal grandmother for 1 or 2 weeks every summer of my life, practically. My grandmother loved her dachshund far more than she ever loved my mother. I knew this very hard truth when I was 10 and cried myself to sleep at night with the sadness of it, though my mother had never spoken a single word of her pain. When I got home from my visit, I asked my father about it. He was always an honest man of very few words. He replied with 3 sentences. Your mother has always been treated like a fifth wheel in that family. I don't understand it, and I can't explain it. Looking back, I know deeply what an important moment of hard truth it was that validated this difficult experience for me. I will always be grateful for that moment because it set me on a path of wanting to understand reality and how unspoken pain is carried inside of each of us. Another goal in therapy, besides understanding, is to make pain in all of our lives more bearable. Reality matters. So with the podcast, I plant seeds that may be hard to digest at first. But when you decide to do the hard work of growing up, to recognize with a wince your own part in the problems, to make the effort to learn from honest self-awareness instead of hiding out in insecure defensiveness, which we all do, it's a remarkable achievement. So I challenge you to give up blame as immature and grapple with the messiness of life's uncertainty. To leave this earth knowing that you tried to be a better person for those you love. This is the real work love requires. I challenge you, my audience, to decide to learn and grow. The work of facing reality and hard truths is powerful and life-changing. It helps the self-absorbed to be more humble. And hear the range in that, from self-absorbed to being more humble and making room for others. The oblivious to pay more attention. The selfish to have more gratitude. The greedy to be more generous. The lonely to recognize how they contribute to their own loneliness. The depressed to take that difficult step of curiosity. The angry to own their own hurt and pain underneath the anger and experiment with being more vulnerable. Those with high expectations to recognize they must learn to be satisfied and not to demand more as a test of love. Those who are perfectionists with their knee-jerk no's find a way to say yes more often. Those who hide out in the familiarity of their home and routines to risk stepping out into the uncertainty of the world and explore. Those who are anxious to learn small tools that take work but help manage fears. Those who want to make an effort to do the work of being a better partner because you face the reality of how you need to improve, and then you get bonus points for giving up the comfort of blame. Our ability to grow and change when we face up to our lopsided, insecure, and exaggerated defense systems is such a gift. Think about TV or books. When characters don't change, it's so much less interesting. Certainly life is hard, and growing up can be hard work, and it's worth it. Contrast Jack Reacher in either the books or the TV series. He remains the same one-trick pony. He is not evolving or growing to the prison, and compare him to the prison jailer Sunil Gupta in the wonderful Netflix series Black Warrant from India. Watching his transformation and growth is truly engaging. It is based on a memoir of his first job in Tihar prison, famous for corruption and despair, and his determination is to improve conditions. It is exactly this growth and transformation that my private practice, website, and 10 years of podcasting in April are all about. The marital psychologist David Schnark says marriage is a people-growing machine. This is true because there are two, not one. Relationships are messy because it is so much more complicated to juggle the needs and wants of both. That is why so many couples opt to let one person take up too much space and the other far less. While it may be uncomfortable to recognize that you take up too much space and power in the relationship, but this self-awareness can help you make a choice to back up and ask questions. If you have less power and space, then this self-awareness empowers you to stop hiding out by asking questions and make more statements to more authentically define your wants. Decide to grow and achieve more range and balance to who you are. So I hope the podcast helps you think about your relationships more deeply instead of avoiding so many problems to stay comfortable. We can only grow by being uncomfortable. Life is all about our choices. We always have the choice to do the hard work, to grow up by facing painful situations honestly. With the podcast and all the guests who have contributed so much over the last decade, I'm committed to passing on understanding more about yourself and about your partner and how relationships work. All in all, I am most grateful to you, my audience, for listening. A shout out to Shirley in San Diego for saying thanks for listening for 2 years. I do appreciate you letting me know. My website, therapyideas.net, is over 450 pages and does take 15.6 seconds to load. Like the podcast, there's no advertising except for my children's book, Dancing with Your Lizard Brain, written with wonderful illustrations by my artist friend Linda Wallen, and 3 online courses. When was the last time you went on a website with no commercial advertising? I hope today helps you understand me a bit more. The podcast and my career are things I'm passionate about. I make mistakes like we all do, but I try to do the right thing because I believe the world can indeed be a better place. I thank you for joining me in my efforts to live with decency in this difficult world.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.